Now, what a joke and what a fiasco. 2 days ago, just 2 days ago, 12 of the most famous soccer clubs in the world said they're going to create their own European Soccer League with 8 more clubs that they'd choose later. Now, seemed to be obviously a play for even more money. But not 48 hours later, their plans have totally collapsed. The 6 British clubs who are going to join, that's Chelsea, Liverpool, Aston Villa, Manchester City, Manchester United, and Arsenal, are now all pulled out. After Chelsea fans, they protested at their ground. The National Soccer Administrator said they'd ban the clubs. Even the Liverpool captain and the team revolted against their owner's plan, so they did not like it and did not want it. You'll never walk alone. And Prince William, an Aston Villa fan and honorary president of England's Football Association, said he shared the concerns of fans about this proposed Super League and the damage it risks causing to the game. So it makes you wonder, how could these proud clubs so have fundamentally misread their fans? And I'll give you a clue. Look who owns them. Arsenal, owned by US billionaire Stan Kroenke. Manchester United, owned by US billionaire Joel Glazer. Liverpool, owned by US billionaire John Henry. Tottenham Hotspur, owned by British billionaire Joe Lewis, but he's now in the Bahamas. Chelsea, owned by Russian plutocrat Roman Abramovich. And Manchester City, owned by the mega-rich Sheikh Mansour from the United Arab Emirates. I was joined earlier by a man who played with 2 of those clubs, Chelsea and Manchester United, as well as Aston Villa. He's a former Socceroos goalkeeper, one of the best of his time, Mark Bosnich, now an analyst for Fox Sports Football. Mark Bosnich, thank you so much for joining me. What happened? How did this plan go so wrong?
Well, good evening to you, Andrew, and great to be back on your show and to see you again. Well, I think the basic of the plan goes back to the basic ethos or ethics of football, whereby, we all grow up anywhere around the world. Let's not forget that there are 4 billion football supporters around the world. And we know that sporting merit is pretty much everything. And what I mean by that is basically that if you're good enough, that you'll have the opportunity to rise to the top. And one of the main theses of these breakaway clubs was the fact that these 12 clubs, who were going to be joined by another 3, so that would be 15 clubs, would have guaranteed status regardless if they won, if they lost, or how they performed. And that really struck at the heart chords of every fan, every ex-footballer, every current footballer, though they were put in a very difficult situation to say anything. And every current manager. And I think Pep Guardiola, who manages Manchester City, pretty much summed it up really succinctly when he turned around and said, in sport, there should always be a relationship between effort and success. And I think really that's what's really undone it, the ferocious backlash, and rightfully so, that's occurred over the last couple of days since this league was announced on Sunday.
Well, that's what we've always loved about the FA Cup in particular, that, a 3rd division team even had a hope, a small hope, of making the final. But here, these rich teams have got it all sewn up and slammed the door shut behind them. I'm just wondering, how important is it in this disaster that the owners, 5 of the 6 owners of the 6 British clubs, we're yet to talk about the European ones that were part of this too, the 6 there, were actually foreigners. Is it that they didn't understand the fans' love of the game, that they wanted their clubs to be still buried in the national competitions? The European one didn't matter so much to them. Or is it just the fact that, it's such a big money thing that all these billionaires are just counting, they want another billion. They're not so interested in being part of the community?
Well, 2 parts of that question. It's a very interesting question. I can understand exactly where you're coming from. A lot of the foreign owners that you've actually spoken about have been part of English football for quite some time. Roman Abramovich, for example, at Chelsea, has been at Chelsea since 2003. Sheikh Mansour bin Zayed for Manchester City, they've been since 2008, 2009 in charge of Manchester City. The American owners, the Glazers, for example, at Manchester United have been in charge, I think, since 2005. John W. Henry, who's, funny enough, just released a statement on either his Instagram or Twitter feed, actually personally apologising for what's gone on in the last 48 hours. He's been in charge of Liverpool for quite some time. You mentioned the one English owner, Joe Lewis. He'll know English football inside out from Tottenham. Stan Kroenke from Arsenal. He's been around for a very, very long time. So I think the real basis of, you know, sort of coming in and having a look at an angle, it's a completely natural angle, in my opinion, to have a look at it from. But basically, they should have known better. And if not, they should have spoken to people in and around the game, specifically the manager and the players, who would have just told them. Because you heard Jurgen Klopp on the weekend, who's the manager of Liverpool, turning around and actually saying, when he was interviewed about it, he knew nothing about it. He was saying that his owners, John W. Henry, you know, Fenway Sports Group, they're good people, they're reasonable people. They wouldn't just come to the conclusion like this. So there's no doubt about that. But what they should have done, or their CEOs, more likely, who were there on the scene day in, day out, working with them, was just to sound out the players, because the players and the manager, they're like the representatives of all your fans.
Mark Bosnich, the British Prime Minister, was also part of the resistance. What did you make of that?
Well, he was, along with Prince William, of course, who's the honorary president of the Football Association. And the real ironic thing about this, Andrew, is that we all know how divisive Brexit has been. There's so many people who are on one side or on the other. But without Brexit, the bottom line is that the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, would not have been able to be so strong in terms of the action that Britain could take upon the clubs had they still been a part of Europe. Because they've still been a part of Europe, a lot of that employment law that they were talking about, basically stopping work permits for foreign players, they were talking about windfall taxes for the owners, and they were also talking about immediate legislative action. All that would have had to go on through the European Court of Law. So it's so ironic in a way that it's actually come to this.
Mark Bosnich, how interesting. Brexit is looking better and better for the British after all. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Andrew.